Think about it. Does freedom in video games push beyond the limits of real-life freedom? Hi, I'm Dylan, and freedom is a lie. Thanks for watching. Just kidding, let's back up. So-called open-world video games have become massively popular, from Skyrim to GTA 5 to Watch Dogs to Borderlands. People love gobbling them up. But maybe their open worlds are just as closed as the worlds of the original Mario. French theologian John Calvin presented the idea of double predestination. If God knows the future, then he knows what I will do, thus I have no real choice in the matter. My future is predetermined. He believed that some people were predestined for heaven while others were predestined for hell, and thus, human agency is fiction. To back up even more, agency is a philosophical term used to describe the capacity of which a person or entity can act in the world. In this case, if our destiny is predetermined, then our agency is not real, because we have no capacity to act in the world because God is acting for us. Whether you agree with John Calvin or not, bear with me. Watch Dogs is set in a futuristic version of Chicago where everything is controlled by a central computer operating system. You play as the stoic hacker Aiden as he seeks vengeance, and the game presents itself as an open world, giving the player complete agency, the capacity to do anything. But it's an illusion. Yes, you can drive around and hack things and hack other things and hack things whilst driving, but you can't, for example, skip up and down or watch Taylor Swift's new music video or dance to said video or get a job in Iceland, let alone decide, hey, maybe I don't want to seek vengeance. In Watch Dogs, your fate is predetermined. While not ending up in John Calvin's heaven or hell, you do, however, end up at the ending by triggering a series of specific events that you have to trigger. This removes your agency entirely and shatters the illusion of an open world game. Games like Grand Theft Auto 5 try and mask that illusion a bit better by offering multiple endings to their game based on player choice. In the case of GTA 5, it would be triple predestination. But this still isn't freedom because there aren't alternate endings in life. There's infinite. Sort of, but more on that in a minute. Janet Murray's Hamlet on the Holodeck examines the vastly different types of narratives that we can explore using interactive media, like video games. For the first time ever, you can be part of a story and determine what happens, but unfortunately, we're not quite there. Games with multiple layers, stories, and factions like Skyrim and Mass Effect allow for more complex storytelling, sometimes even requiring more than one playthrough to experience the entire narrative. But it's still not entirely free. Watch Dogs was designed to tell a very specific story, and yes, in between those larger story points, you can drive around hacking things from the back of a motorcycle. You are still forced into as much of a linear narrative as running sideways, jumping on Goombas, only to find out that your princess is indeed in another castle. While we do lack agency in games, maybe that's not entirely unrealistic. While you might not agree with John Calvin's ideas, our agency in real life might also be fictitious. Writer Stephen Nereo writes about a time he was in Germany enjoying a beer in the back of a moving car, commenting to his German friends that he couldn't do that in America. His German friends were shocked. And this got me thinking, are we really any freer than Aiden or Mario? Yes, we can do all the little things they have yet to program into video games, like hopping on one foot on a bridge wearing a jacket that our mother gave us when we were 17, but there's still very much a limit on what we can actually do. In our world, free market capitalism teaches us that we do in fact have freedom, as long as we use that freedom to grow the economy. Yes, we luckily experience a lot of freedom, especially compared to some less fortunate places in the world, but we still aren't truly free. In fact, people are being prosecuted for exposing that lack of freedom. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden of the NSA leaks showed us that, like Chicago in Watch Dogs, we have a lot less agency than we thought. We are a lot less free than we thought. But even in a perfect world where everything and everyone was free, we still wouldn't be. Video games allow freedom in areas that real life doesn't, like senselessly murdering hundreds of people, or being really good at sports. That last one might just be me. While at the moment you can't do much more than run, jump, mine, and build in video games, in the future you will be able to. We will eventually develop games that will allow us to experience more than we can in real life. In Battlestar Galactica's coincidentally named John Cavill's famous speech, he says,
"I saw a star explode and send out the building blocks of the universe. And you know how I perceived one of the most glorious events in the universe? With these ridiculous gelatinous orbs in my skull. with eyes designed to perceive only a tiny fraction of the EM spectrum, with ears designed only to hear vibrations in the air.
I don't want to be human.
And I could know much more. I could experience so much more, but I'm trapped in this absurd body.
When we eventually develop this Inception-like technology, we will finally experience true agency, the ability to do whatever we want. And we will experience things that humans were never supposed to. But until then, we will continue running, jumping, and finding ourselves in the wrong castle. What do you guys think? Is freedom an illusion? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, be sure to click right on my face to subscribe, or at least think about it. Are rupees in Hyrule worth millions of dollars? Let's see what you guys thought. Cody Webb points out that I'm still saying Hyrule wrong. Apparently the emphasis on the high and not the rule, like Hyrule. Is it Hyrule? Hyrule. It's so hard to say. Am I doing it right? Killjoy's Gaming writes that the rupees you see on screen are actually just representations of the rupees, and if you want to find their actual size, you should calculate the volume of the bag in which they're kept. Good idea. Totally should have thought of that. Time to math. Apparently I offended a lot of you by mocking your dire need for hand grenades. I'm sorry about that, but I couldn't actually think of a reason why anyone would ever want or need a hand grenade, but apparently there's a lot of good ones. But you know, when I look around my desk, I see my laptop, my keys, my wallet, and I just feel like a hand grenade might stick out or blow up. Gabe Davis and a bunch of you pointed out that supply and demand would drastically reduce the worth of the rupees. This is a really good point, but what I was saying is that Hyrule is a communist state with a very controlled amount of money, and people for some reason are trying to hide their money from the government, maybe for tax evasion or something. And the money you actually find in the grass and the pots isn't money that's being magically regenerated, making infinite money that totally would crash the market, but it's in fact people's money that they just haven't figured out to put in a bank, so they're hiding it in the grass. They're not making any new money, they're taking money that already exists within the kingdom and just trying to store it somewhere else. Rexblade Walker points out that gem worth is actually determined by its rarity, which is totally true, and I was talking about if you were to introduce 1 rupee into the United States economy, how much it would be worth in a dollar conversion, and then taking that number and extrapolating it to all the money in Hyrule. I agree that if you were to introduce all the money from Hyrule into the United States at once, it would totally reduce the value of the rupees entirely, as did the introduction of ink and silver into the Spanish economy. Back in whenever that was. My recommended reading for the week is Ready Player One, which is a really awesome book about people who retreat from their real lives into a hyper-realistic video game, which is a much better alternative than living in the terrible real world. If you want something non-fiction, I recommend Janet Murray's Hamlet on the Holodeck, which I mentioned earlier. It's a really interesting read because it was written in 1997, and a lot of her premonitions about storytelling in video games totally came true. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.